What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got a reaction to Joan Jett's top 10 songs, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter and patron of the channel, Evan David. Thank you, Evan David. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. This channel would not exist without them. If you'd like to support us in any way, check out the Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. Okay, I was born in 1971, so growing up in the 80s, I know Joan Jett. I know her two most famous songs for sure. It's when I was really just starting to get into music, but I don't know a lot of her catalog. I don't really know much of her story. So if you ever watched one of Evan David's videos before, you know there's going to be a ton of building out of the story of Joan Jett. You always feel like you know the artist after you have one of Evan David's reactions come into your feed there. But I'll tell you before I even start, the music won't be in the video. It'll be at a Vimeo link below. So if you just want to click there right now and follow along with this, that's probably your best bet. But I'll remind you again when I'm done with the intro. So without further ado, Evan David says, rock and roll legend has it that the genesis of the musical career of Joan Jett, who was born Joan Marie Larkin in September of 1958 in Wynwood, a suburb of Philadelphia, but whose family later moved to Rockville, Maryland, occurred when she was a mere 13 years old. As Joan herself recalled, I asked my parents for a guitar for Christmas, and they kind of thought, that's strange, but they got it for me, like this thing you get at Sears for like $30 for the guitar and amp. I was really excited. I had no idea how to play it, but I got it plugged in. I just sat there for hours and drove my parents absolutely insane. And then I went to learn how to play and went and took a lesson. And the guy said, girls don't play rock and roll. My parents told me I could be anything I wanted to when I was 5 years old, and I believed them. I didn't realize really there was this glass ceiling. And when they got me that guitar for Christmas, the electric guitar, I was thinking, most parents wouldn't do that. My rebellion, as they say, was not against my parents. What I saw in society with all this lip service to women, women's lib and all that, I saw that it was bull. She probably added something onto that. Her ever-growing musical enthusiasm was galvanized still further when her family moved to Los Angeles, and she began frequenting a notorious Hollywood club known as Rodney Bingenheimer's English Disco. I've never heard of this one, which unusually for American clubland at the time, lived up to its name by focusing upon British-influenced glam rock by the likes of David Bowie and Mark Bolan, as well as American fellow travelers such as Iggy Pop and Suzi Quatro, the latter of whom proved to be extremely influential in shaping Jett's ever-increasing determination to be a fully fledged female rock and roller in her own right. After meeting the soon-to-be equally notorious producer, scene maker, and would-be Svengali, Kim Fowley, at the English Disco, Jett quickly made it clear to him that, quote, I want to form an all-girl band. I can't be the only girl in Hollywood that wants to do this. Indeed, this very much proved to be the case, as the still barely 16-year-old Jett soon went on to form a band named The Runaways, whose lineup would eventually coalesce around lead singer Cherie. I can't remember how you can do it both ways. We'll say Cherie Curry. Lead guitarist Lita Ford, bassist Jackie Fox, and drummer Sandy West playing alongside. Jett herself on rhythm guitar, and with the ever-mercurial Fowley serving as manager. Jett would later go on to describe their brief but turbulent 4-year active career as follows. Quote, what Jimi Hendrix said about women playing rock and roll, being looked at like aliens, in our case, is absolutely true. Everything happened really fast. We were playing gigs. We were in the studio. We just cut the tracks live. I was so into this idea of girls being able to play rock and roll and they'll play as well as boys will. It would be so cool and sexy because it had never been done. I thought everybody would love it. Once they realized it was serious and we planned to make an album and go on tour and do everything that male bands were doing, the tables turned where it went from, oh, cute, sweet, to slut, whore, etc. Just because I was a girl. Why? What's with that people need to be so hateful because you're playing rock and roll? At this point, there were signs the women's lib movement was really taking root. It showed so much promise. The world had never seen a band like us. I felt that England got us more and did take us seriously. That does not surprise me, being American. I got a chance to see some of the punk stuff up close. It really influenced me. I kind of went over as a glitter person and came home dressed as a punk. When we got to Japan, that's when I felt, quote, wow, thousands of girls like treating us like the Beatles. I know it sounds funny. That's the only way to describe it. I felt like we tapped into something else with female audiences. I thought it was exhilarating. Just because I thought, that's powerful, man. It's all girls. And when I thought about it, I realized Japanese women are treated like second-class citizens. So these teenage girls were feeling the power of the Runaways, saying, no, we can do it. In the wake of their physically and emotionally exhausting, if not overwhelming tour of Japan, however, both Fox and then Curry left the band for personal reasons in 1977, in both cases following serious clashes with either their fellow band members and or Fowley, who himself parted company with the Runaways soon afterwards. Jett then took on lead vocals, having previously felt too shy to do so, But 2 years later, herself chose to quit the band in the wake of further musical disagreements with West and Ford. Later, she said, quote, we'd always been close enough to laugh and all that stuff. And you could just tell those sorts of elements were leaving, you know. We felt like we had to walk on eggshells. And I don't want to fight. I love these girls. It was our baby. How did I personally deal with the crumbling of the Runaways? I drank a lot, starting at 8 in the morning. Not a good way to deal with things. I felt like LA was totally laughing at me. We told you it wouldn't work. We told you you couldn't do it. I'm lucky I'm still here. I was angry. I didn't know how to live in a world that would give girls blank for playing guitar. I thought, don't you guys have more important things to be upset about? I didn't know what else to do, but we still had some legal obligations. We had signed to do music for a movie. Even though the band wasn't together anymore, I needed to write these songs. It was pretty much a mess. Fortunately for Jett, who at her lowest ebb had even been admitted to the hospital suffering from a heart infection, into the breach at this point stepped producer and former bubblegum music impresario Kenny Laguna, who had initially been asked to produce the Runaways as a group, but himself later admitted that, quote, I wasn't really interested, although I was intrigued by 5 crazy girls who were attractive, took a lot of drugs, made good music, and then the band broke up, and Joan Jett was the only one left who was going to live up to the commitment. They had 8 days to create 6 songs when her new manager, Toby Mammoth, called me. My wife, Meryl, said to me, I've been reading about Joan Jett. I think she's significant. And we went and stayed at the Riot House on Sunset, and Joan walked in, and I saw this girl with a black leather jacket. She was a little beat up by then. She was drinking, she was hanging out with Sid Vicious and a bunch of people who all ended up dead. I headed into the studio and I said, we'll cut tracks with these session guys, and then we'll put your guitar on. It's no big deal. She goes, and there won't be a record. And she wasn't kidding, but I dug it. She was that unique. Indeed, this newfound creative rapport between Jett and Laguna was so strong that even after the project in question fell through, they swiftly decided to continue working together, with Laguna later describing, quote, how I took her to England and every day we'd go to Ramport, the Who studio, and record the Joan Jett record. She brought menace and I brought a lot of pop sensibility. And the more we knew each other, the more she trusted me. For her part, Joan in turn described how by this point, quote, things were definitely looking up. I felt good. I felt okay. I've got someone to talk to write music with. Let's see where this goes. It felt like you were kind of blessed by the rock and roll gods. Well, he succeeded in persuading Areola Records to release a self-titled Joan Jett album in Europe. However, when trying to find a U.S. record label that was willing to follow suit, Laguna soon came up against the same forces of institutional inertia, if not out-and-out misogynist hostility that had dogged Jett's own efforts before, with the latter recalling how Kenny actually was looking for record deals. So Kenny would send the tapes into all the labels, all the majors, all the minors. It was 23 labels, and we got 23 rejection letters, all saying, quote, you need a song search? There are no songs here. Maybe if she loses a guitar. These people heard 5 songs, 4 of which were top 20 hits. That can't be a song search. That's, quote, you don't have ears. I know it had something to do with my image, the Runaways, being a girl. I think Kenny thought it was going to be a lot easier than it ultimately turned out to be. We discussed printing, saying, let's print up these records, make our own records. Nobody's going to sign us. We'll take this music we believe in so much and just do it. Our first office was more or less Kenny's big, huge catalog. So we had this big old 1976 sedan DeVille. We'd hang out after gigs, and there'd be a little crowd of 30 or 40 people. We'd sign autographs, and anybody wanted, we had the trunk full of albums. Laguna himself described his seemingly fruitless quest to get Jett signed. Thus, quote, we asked for no money. Just put out the record. My mom was an outrageous feminist. She used to drive the car, and my father sat where everybody else's mother sat. So when I met Joan and heard about the Runaways, I never really thought it was weird or groundbreaking until I tried to promote her. And I ran into these walls, brick walls. We couldn't get anything going in America. All of a sudden, we find out we're the #1 import. The record's on the radio, and nobody wants to be our label. I'm seeing something going on I can't put my finger on, but I know we're tapping into something. So it gave me the courage to empty our bank account. My daughter was just born. She was only a couple months old. We started a college fund. There was $3,000 or $4,000 in there. It's a lot of money back then. It was like I had jumped off the diving board and I was hoping somebody was going to put water in the pool. We used to always have records in the trunk, and it wasn't done. In those days, you did not sell records at gigs. It wasn't part of the landscape yet. That was the start of Black Heart Records, right? You don't have a way, boys and girls. You find a way. You create a way. All right, meanwhile, swiftly following this groundbreaking step of forming what was soon dubbed Black Heart Records, Jett, and despite initial misgivings, Laguna swiftly decided that, as Joan later put it, quote, we want to tour this music because it's great. We need to form a band. I went back to LA, put an ad in the LA Weekly or something. It said, Joan Jett looking for 3 good men. I kind of knew in my gut there's no way I could play with girls again. Certainly not right away because it would be compared to the Runaways, and that was not good on any level. These initial recruits to what became known in turn as the Blackhearts, were Gary Ryan on bass, Eric Ambel on guitar, and one Danny Furious O'Brien on drums, although the latter would be replaced by Lee Crystal in turn within a year. The band began touring relentlessly throughout Europe and the US, relocating to New York from LA in the process due to the higher number of potential venues that were easy to reach in the Big Apple. Eventually, after their tireless efforts, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts were finally able to make their own major record label breakthrough, thanks to Laguna's old friend Neil Bogart, who signed them to his own label, Casablanca Records, and not only reissued the Joan Jett album under a retitled guise of Bad Reputation, but also arranged for Jett and the band, who by now had seen Ricky Byrd replace Eric Ambel on guitar, to record their second album, which would be released as I Love Rock and Roll in November 1981, and which was swiftly followed in turn by the release of the title track as a single a month later. This soon-to-be iconic tune would eventually reach number one on the Billboard charts for 7 weeks, leading Jett to later recall how such staggering success was kind of a ha-ha, I told you so moment in a way. But it also said, look, it's real. We're good. It wasn't I'm good, it's we're good. It's a team. It's an effort, a team effort. And we all go out there to make this music. It was like you were always 1 foot in the gutter and 1 foot in possible stardom. It was surreal, so surreal. It went so far beyond me. It made me realize what people can do in general if the circumstances are right. So began a decades-long musical odyssey, which will see Jett recording a further 11 studio albums, both with and without the Blackhearts to this day, clocking up 10 more U.S. Top 40 singles in the process, as well as constantly touring, most recently alongside Def Leppard, Poison, and Motley Crue as part of the so-called Stadium Tour in 2022. Other career accolades elsewhere include a starring role in the movie Light of Day alongside Michael J. Fox in 1987, serving as executive producer for the Runaways biopic released in 2010, in which Jett herself was played by ex-Twilight star Kristen Stewart, and being inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the guise of Joan Jett and the Blackhearts in 2015. Moreover, while her commercial fortunes may have waxed and waned over the years, as has the personal lineup of the Blackhearts themselves, 2 key things have nevertheless remained constant throughout Jett's career. The first of which has been her still ongoing and rock-solid creative partnership with Kenny Laguna. That's amazing, right? Who once remarked how, quote, "Our business is funny. You're hot and important, and then you're not. But we stuck together. This is a family that's been together since 1979 and never wavered from each other." The second constant, meanwhile, is Jett's increasingly inspirational status, both as a socio-political activist for both female empowerment, including self-defense, and animal rights, amongst other causes, and above all, as a professional and musical role model for many other independently minded rock and rollers, both male and especially female alike. An overwhelmingly good reputation, which, if anything, has only grown in stature over time. As such, Evan David says, I hope you all enjoy this top 10 as we celebrate the life and work of one of the most iconic female musicians to ever strap on a guitar. And while I remain as ever acutely aware that you may not all agree with my choices, and indeed look forward to seeing your own Joan Jett top 10s in the comments below, I hope that you will nevertheless all agree by the end that Miss Jett has more than achieved the legacy which she once hoped for herself. Namely that, quote, I want a certain sort of fame, like when they write the ultimate rock and roll history book, I want my name to be there, standing for something. Like being one of the first females to really, play rock and roll and have that sort of rock and roll spirit. As always, what a fantastic write-up by Evan David. I'll remind you again, the music won't be in the video, but it will be at a Vimeo link below. Let's kick this top 10 off with Bad Reputation. Originally released as part of Joan Jett's first self-titled studio album in May of 1980, and then as the title track, of course, to said album when it was re-released as Bad Reputation in January of 1981. This hard-hitting song was apparently written as a snarling response to the negative baggage that Jett had felt was unjustly placed upon her shoulders, both in the wake of the Runaways implosion, as well as a female rocker in her own right. And ever since has become a powerful anthem for everyone and anyone who refuses to be pigeonholed by society's often and equally negative expectations regarding their own lives. As such, it is hardly surprising that while astonishingly relegated to a mere B-side when first released as a single back in 1981, Bad Reputation has nevertheless become one of Jett's most iconic tunes, being prominently featured in movies such as Shrek, for example, as well as more recently being used as UFC and WWE superstar Ronda Rousey's entrance music, amongst other things. As such, I'd like you guys to react to the official music video, so we're going to check that out. I know this song, but I don't think I knew it until the last 5, 6, 7 years. I didn't know it when I was, I would have been 9 years old at that point when it was released, and it wasn't a big hit at that point or anything. All right. Thanks to Evan David again. Let's get after it. All right. Bad Reputation. I had to look it up myself. It's 249 on the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. But they made this video in 1982 after the success of I Love Rock and Roll. Even though it came out in 1980, I was like, what's going on here? Because it had all that in there. Did a great job of showing us the record company turn downs and selling the records out of the back of the van. In this case, not a catalog, but really good song. Next up, we got Hold Me. Originally released as part of her fourth studio album, Glorious Results of a Misspent Youth, in October 1984. Evan David says this wistful tune, while perhaps never quite moving on to full-blown rock ballad territory, nevertheless provides a genuinely moving showcase for Jett's more human, vulnerable side without either ever seeming mawkish or indeed neglecting to also display her better-known rockier side whenever the time is right. All right, I don't know any of her slower stuff, so let's check this one out. All right, Hold Me, definitely more ballady, saying that when she gets scared and lonely, she needs someone like this guy. So I liked it the more it went on. I'm not sure that Joan's voice is super suited for this kind of music. I think it's better for up-tempo rockers, but like I said, I never heard her do a ballad, so I'd have to have repeated listens on this one. Next up at number 8 on Evan David's top 10 Joan Jett songs, we got Roadrunner, originally released as part of her 5th studio album, Good Music, in 1986, and then re-recorded as part of her 7th studio album, The Hit List, in 1990. This rousing, energetic cover of a 1977 tune by a group called The Modern Lovers captures both Jett's consummate skill as a covers artist, as well as her all-encompassing enthusiasm for an exciting slice of, you guessed it, primal rock and roll, especially seen in this clip performed live on the David Letterman show in 1987, so we're going to be watching that. Evan David says, moreover, it also serves as a candid reminder of Jett's hard-won promotional savvy to boot, and that she recorded no fewer than 48 different promo versions of the song for various radio stations throughout the U.S., each of whose lyrics cited different local landmarks from its respective station's catchment area in an attempt to gain further attention to the song and hopefully increase sales from each station's listeners in turn. As Jett herself later recalled, I got on the phone with the radio person from each place and we talked about the streets and the places. I pretty much wrote the stuff down and did it in one take. It was fun. All right, Roadrunner, that was a fun one. I enjoyed it the more it went on from the iconic David Letterman show, which I used to watch religiously, man. But catchy song. Loved it. Paul Schaefer, the leader of the band's over there singing on the choruses too. So enjoyed that. Enjoyed the energy. And you saw where I like the spoken word in there where she was able to drop whatever place she was at. All right, next up at number 7, we have Frustrated. Evan David says, also originally released as part of Glorious Results of a Misspent Youth. This archetypal tale of keep feeling entrapped by a stultifying home environment, while all the while a much more exciting life and seemingly forbidden outside world tantalizingly lies forever just beyond the grasp of one's desperately outstretched fingertips. Shows Jett to be working in a very much the same classic teenage angst vein as the likes of Eddie Cochran's all-time great tune, Summertime Blues, but stands out even in the illustrious crowd due to the sheer sense of pulsating energy that both Jett and the rest of her Blackhearts bring to this tune in particular, both with regard to her electrifyingly effective vocals as well as the impressive guitar work on the song's lingering outro. Frustrated, just like Evan David told the story of the song. She's frustrated because her parents see what they want to see and they're kind of set in their ways, and she wants to do so much more. The guitar was definitely the highlight for me on this one. Next up at number 6, we have a song I'm very familiar with, I Hate Myself for Loving You. Originally released as part of Joan's 6th studio album, Up Your Alley, in May 1988. I was just going into my senior year of high school a few months later, and eventually reaching number 8 in the U.S. This no-holds-barred rocking exploration of the emotional damage caused to one's self-esteem by a dysfunctional yet addictive relationship gone obsessively wrong has since been aptly used as part of the DC Comics-based movie Birds of Prey to depict the infamously unstable relationship of the Joker and Harley Quinn, while also remaining an explosive slice of prime rock and roll in its own right, especially as seen in the song's official video, which we will watch. All right, I Hate Myself for Loving You, where Joan is in her element, right? Rocking songs like this. I know this song so well, so it always suffers from familiarity, where I'm going to like it more than a song I haven't heard oftentimes, unless it's just oversaturated. But also shout out to 80s here, not just Joan's here, but the guys, right? Hairspray companies had to be banking millions and tens of millions in the 80s. I lived through it, man. I lived through it. All right, let's go to the top half of the list. Number 5, You Don't Know What You Got. Originally released as part of Bad Reputation, according to Joan herself, the first one we wrote for that album was You Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone. To me, it was, Kenny was taking my life and I guess being a therapist. In a similar vein, meanwhile, Kenny Laguna also once commented of this song that, quote, Joan sort of needs to experience heartache to write about it. And indeed, the melancholy atmosphere of this tune most definitely captures the bittersweet emotional state that Jett was most likely in at this point in her career, as described above, while remaining universal enough in its concerns to resonate with anyone who has inadvertently felt a good thing slip through their fingers before they even realized it. You Don't Know What You Got. A little quieter than what some of this other stuff's going to be that we're going to get to on this list, but well done. I mean, it's the first album. It's it's well done. That age-old thing of, it's true, you don't know what you got until it's gone, because you can't sit here and appreciate everything, and then you're like, man, I should have appreciated that more. Been there once or twice in my life. Next up, we got Do You Want to Touch Me, in parentheses, oh yeah, also released as part of Bad Reputation, as well as reaching number 20 in the US following its release as a single in September of 1982. So after she hit it big with I Love Rock and Roll and Crimson and Clover. This riotously raunchy and raucous Gary Glitter cover has since become an irresistible staple of Joan Jett's live set to this day. And as such, I'd like you to please react to this clip of the song being performed live on the MTV New Year's Ball show in New York in 1984/85. It's becoming 85. Everybody used to watch that in the heyday. All right, Do You Want to Touch Me? Oh yeah. A song that it's fine as a song, but it really does well with this live performance. The thing that strikes me watching this as much as anything, well, one, the dress code must have been you got to wear black pants, but you can wear whatever shirt you want. But two, to watch the crowd all into it, because guess what? There's none of these, right? Everybody's just in a moment of time that will never be again, where everyone, it's a communal experience. Everyone can be into the music, and yeah, those days are long gone. So it's kind of cool not to see people on their phones or trying to film every second, just enjoying it. So that had to be quite the scene. Next up at number 3, we got Crimson and Clover. Originally released as part of her second album, I Love Rock and Roll, in November 1981, eventually reaching number 7 in the US when released as a single in April of 1982. This fantastic cover and equally groovy Tommy James and the Shondells song both acts as a showcase for Jett's voice as its most breathily seductive, while also implying that the singer is going to use said seductive power in such a way that still leaves her very much calling all the shots, and with gloriously alluring results. We're going to look at the official video for this song. Evan David says part of the reason why this tune can have such a radically dramatic effect on its listeners, meanwhile, is the fact that in the reverse to what had usually been the protocol when a woman covered a song by a male singer, or vice versa, Jett did not, in this case, elect to switch the gender pronouns of the object of her desire from her to him, as would normally have happened. According to Joan herself, however, her motivation for not doing so was for the simple reason that follows. People worried that I didn't change the words in Crimson and Clover to him from her, but it's only because that wouldn't have rhymed. There's been a lot of reasons read into that, but it's as simple as that. It wouldn't have rhymed. All right, Crimson and Clover. I think the first song I knew from her, maybe I knew I Love Rock and Roll. I can't remember which one was released first, but as a little 10-year-old, I think so far that's her best vocal performance, right? I love this song. The vocal performance is great. I didn't mention it, but very much the same as Bad Reputation, which was number 10, which was released a year previously, but the video was shot a year later. You know, these early videos, the early 80s videos, you know, you got the quick change, right? You got sometimes photos, and you got the slow motion everywhere, right? The slow motion adds to it. Sometimes, like on Bad Reputation, we switch back and forth between black and white and color. We got all these tricks going on in the early 80s. Next up at number 2, in parentheses, I'm Gonna, and then Runaway. Originally released as part of I Love Rock and Roll once again, and while its title may have not been a knowing reference to Jett's previous group, what remains undeniable, as far as I'm concerned, Evan David says, is that this bouncy yet defiant tune, aptly describing its singer's determination to escape from a once promising relationship gone sour, is one of the most joyously liberating tunes in Jett's entire catalog, and as such has always been a personal favorite of mine. Song being performed live on the German rock show Rock Pop in 1982. That's what we are going to check out. All right, Runaway. Right in her wheelhouse, right? Just sounds great on this. A very good live performance. I was trying to figure out if she was lip syncing, and I don't think she was, but whenever they get real close to the mic and kind of go away. But on these old videos, sometimes the syncing is not great. So I don't think she was, but a nice performance there. A song that I had never heard. I would drum roll it up for number 1, but no reason to. I Love Rock and Roll. Evan David says, well, it could hardly be anything else, could it? I agree. Originally released as a title track of her aforementioned second studio album, and then reaching a well-deserved number 1 in the US for 7 weeks, which is an insane run at number 1, especially in 1981. It's December of 1981. The superlative slice of quintessential rock and roll has since become Jett's unforgettable musical calling card. And yet it began life as a cover of a song which had first been performed by a relatively obscure British group, The Arrows, 5 years earlier. Joan tells the tale. She says, quote, I'd seen a song that was the B-side of another song on TV. It was called I Love Rock and Roll. I'm like, that's a hit. The Runaways didn't want to do it, and so I later did a version with the Sex Pistols and Steve Jones and Paul Cook. Once I was with Kenny and we formed the Blackhearts, it was something that I wanted to try again, and the rest is history. Evan David says this instantly iconic Joan Jett song has since been covered or parodied by artists such diversely as Britney Spears and Weird Al Yankovic, but it's still Jett's irresistibly anthemic version that has since become far and away the most definitive one, and indeed stands as her clearest, most undeniable claim to music immortality as a whole. Totally correct. Not least due to its equally iconic official video, which we're going to watch in a minute. Then he says, by the way, it should be noted this video was originally broadcast in black and white back in the day, as Joan disliked how her red jumpsuit, as seen in the video, looked in color at the time, considering it as being too garish. However, I, for one, prefer the later released color version of the video. Hence, that's the one we're going to watch. Number 1, I love rock and roll. Right, I love rock and roll. I mean, it doesn't get more anthemic than that, right? The hand claps, the chorus that we can all yell together. Great video, especially for 1981. I mean, I've seen parts of this video. I don't think I've ever seen it all. I mean, maybe I did way back in the early days of MTV. I mean, this predates the early days of MTV, but I'm sure they ran it a lot. But, I mean, a great choice for number 1. So before we get to my favorites, you got to get to Evan David's normally long list of honorable mentions. And no exception here because he goes through the entire discography and spends a ton of time on these videos. Honorable mentions for Evan David: Make Believe, You Don't Own Me, Doing All Right with the Boys, Love Is Pain, Victim of Circumstance, Bits and Pieces, Little Drummer Boy, Louie Louie, Handyman, Everyday People, 100 Feet Away, Secret Love, the French Song, I Love Playing with Fire, Had Enough, Cherry Bomb solo version, Long Time, Love Like Mine, I Can't Control Myself, Bird Dog, Dirty Deeds, Love Hurts, Celluloid Heroes, I Want to Be Your Dog, Activity Girl, Androgynous, AC/DC, and especially Fake Friends, I Need Someone, I Love You, Love Me, Love. I Love You, Love Me, Love. Good Music, Backlash, and Science Fiction / double feature. So yeah, I could have just said everything else, right, in her catalog. Now that's a great honorable mention list. So now we're going to get to my faves, which are really just going to be like right down the middle, stereotypical. The songs that I knew, except for I'm Gonna Run Away. That's going to be an honorable mention. My faves are going to be Bad Reputation, I Hate Myself for Loving You, Crimson and Clover, and I Love Rock and Roll. I mean, you know, those are her best known songs for a reason because they're iconic. So these other ones I'm sure are growing me the more I listen to them. So let me know your favorites below. Do you have a top 10 you want to share or a top 5? Let us know in the comments below. But remember, it's hard to narrow this down to 10 songs. So Evan David did a fantastic job. Until next time, guys, I will see you.